Booleans are a way of combining or subtracting pieces from other meshes using objects. And for video games, we can use Booleans, but we have to make some changes to the mesh after we use them. Booleans cause errors when we make them, most of the time. And those errors have got to be kind of fixed up. So we're going to talk about how to make a basic Boolean. Then we're going to talk about how to clean up the meshes that you're using to make the Boolean so that they'll make the Boolean function correct. We'll talk about attaching different objects together to make multiple Booleans, and then we'll talk about cleaning up the mesh. So there's a lot of pieces in this one. And that's because Booleans have a lot of different ways they can work. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this piece. We're going to come back to this guy. So I'm going to go to Hide Selection. And we're going to talk about, I'm also going to hide this one. We're going to talk about these two. What I'm going to do is Boolean this cylinder into this box. Okay, the first thing here, checking to make sure I'm set up correctly. All right. When we make a Boolean, we want to make sure that the object we're doing the Boolean with, in other words, this is going to be like a drill bit. We're going to drill little cylinders into our box. We need to make sure that it's as optimized as possible. Optimized means these rings here we don't need. See, I can get rid of those over here, and it doesn't really change the shape. So we need to do that. The second thing we need to do for video games is we need to get this as low poly as possible. And you can see that I can get it down to that, which isn't much of a cylinder. That's three-sided. But I'm going to go to about, let's just do 10. 10 looks like it'll work. Let me see what I've got there with 10. I think what I'm going to do, what you want is an even spaced one. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. When I go to top and I look at this from the top, see how these aren't very evenly spaced. And which one would be? 8 would be, or 10. So 8 or 10 look like it will work. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to place this piece over my cylinder and scale it so that it fits. You can either use the scaling over here, which we haven't talked about much, or you can use your scaling here if you want to. I'll just use this scaling since we haven't used this over here a whole lot. The height doesn't matter, but the depth will be. Now you can left click on the box and hit Alt X so you can see into the box. Now it's like a piece of ice and I can kind of see down into that. And then what we're going to want to do with our cylinder is place the cylinder so that it's not in any major intersecting areas. And what that means is, let me highlight this guy, Alt X again. I don't want to place it right on top of these intersecting lines. So I'm going to scoot it over a little bit, right about there. Will work. And we'll talk more about that in a second because that's going to be important when I have to go back and clean up this Boolean function. Okay, so we've got a piece intersecting. Now, it doesn't really matter which piece we select. In this case, I'm going to select the box. And Boolean is located in kind of a strange place, at least I think so. It's under Create, Geometry, Compound Objects. Again, this is kind of where all the extras were. Remember we talked about Loft was here earlier. Here's Boolean, B-O-O-L-E-A-N. And you get a couple choices with Boolean. We always go for these great big buttons first. That's why they're big. It says Pick Operand B. That's Max Talk for pick the other object, and I will pick the other object. Now, it's made this whole, at least in mine. Now, in your case, it may not. Sometimes you need to get down here to these other choices, which are down here under Operation. And you can see that I could do Union, which glues them together. If I go to Alt X, see there is no bottom to the cylinder now. It's just been glued in and optimize. That's union. Intersection, which cuts everything, it's only the part that was below the box. Subtraction A from B, which was my default, and that's what I got. Subtraction B from A, which isn't too exciting, it just cut off the bottom of the cylinder. Or we can cut it. And cut's actually pretty useful, even though it's kind of boring right now, because we could deselect these, or we could select these polygons and delete them, and we would have a little hole here that we could extrude out. So I'm going to go with A minus B. A was the big green box, B was the cylinder. Okay? And you can see why we want to optimize it, because see those nice clean lines down there? We're not creating a bunch of polygons. If I had segments that were in my cylinder, I would have unneeded polygons built into my mesh right now, which is not what I want. Okay, so we've got a few things we need to clean up now. The main problem with our Boolean is it's created natural errors in our mesh, even though you don't see them. And they wouldn't be that important if we were just rendering this. You can see if I render this, it's going to be fine. Sometimes you'll get a black line, or this whole polygon will be missing. And those are those errors. But right now it looks fine. But it's really not. And I got my Boolean function. I'm going to convert this Boolean function to an edit poly. So editable poly. Now it's an editable poly mesh. The Boolean has been welded into the mesh and it's there for good. And I'm going to poke around down here around this little hole now. We're going to look for some errors. If I go to polygon mode, go to configure, I want shade selected faces so that I can see that. If I go to polygon mode, you'll see we have a multi-sided polygon. What it means is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sides to this polygon. That's too many. We can have 3 or we can have 4. And that's the problem with Booleans, is it makes multi-sided polygons. Your games aren't going to like these. They're going to show up as errors. So what we do, we delete it. Just spin this around so you know what you're looking at. That hole is still there. It's just you're seeing into the back here. So it hasn't disappeared. It's still there. And I'm going to go to Polygon and Create. See the little blue vertices here that go around my Boolean? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click, go out here to this point, bring it back in. Actually, we can do 4-sided. You can do 4 or 3-sided. See, we've got one polygon. You can go all the way out here, but that wouldn't be a very good polygon. I'm going to go 3. We don't want them crossing over on themselves. So this one isn't bad. See, that's pretty good. This one's a good one. Could go all the way over there. I'm going to go here just to keep things even. This is going to be a 4-sided one. I got to scoot over a little bit. Oops, I missed a point. There's a point right here. Okay, now that's one side. Now see how I didn't deal with these right here, because if we zoom in, what we're getting, this is a flat plane and there's a point right here. That point's going to need to be merged over. We can't have that point sticking in the middle of our polygon, and that's because we Booleaned through a segment. So I'm going to click this polygon and get rid of it. If I go to vertices, you'll see here's a little point. This is the one we're talking about. This guy needs to go. If I just delete it, see I kill my polygon that I've got there. But I can do a target weld, and I'm just going to target weld it right over here. See, nice and clean. Did the same thing over on this one. And now I can go and create, oops, I'm still in vertice mode. I want to be in polygon mode. Create these polygons here. lost which way I was going. There we go. 1, 2, 3, do 4 there. You know what? I should have done 4 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a good one. There we go. This one can go over here. And I've got to zoom out a little bit to get this guy because he's going to stretch all the way over to the other side. Create. 1, 2, 3. That's a 4-sided one. 1, 2. That's a 3-sided one. And this guy can be a 4-sided one. There we go. Now, that mesh that I've created is nice and clean, so it doesn't have any errors in it at this point. The other problem is the bottom, and if I click on the bottom in polygon mode, you'll see that it's one great big 10-sided polygon. That's not going to be any good either, and so what we're going to have to do is get in here and zoom in. I'm going to move to Alt-X mode because I can see it a little bit better. So I've made it invisible so you can see through it. And I'm going to go to Polygon, Create again. You can see the points are down here that I need. And all I'm going to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 across. 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way across, and 1, 2, 3, 4 and across. And now I have a nice mesh. Alt-X again, zoom out, and I have a mesh that, at least theoretically, should have no errors unless I missed a vertices somewhere. So that's how we have to clean up Booleans, at least for video games. Now if you're just rendering this, you can use Booleans all you want. A word of warning about Booleans. Always save your mesh before you use a Boolean. They can crash the software. It's not just Macs. It's pretty much any 3D software. Because of them chopping meshes up, there's a lot of math flying around in there. And you'll want to save the object before you do a Boolean. So always save before you do a Boolean. Alright. Now, that's a simple Boolean. Let's zoom out here. Let me unhide all so I get some other parts here. And we're going to talk about, there we go. This guy I'm going to hide again. I don't need him quite yet. We're going to talk about this box. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to have it intersect. I'm going to make it a lot smaller. There we go. Alt-X, spin this guy around, make sure I don't want it quite that deep. That's what I'm after. I just want a little indentation there. Okay. And click off of that, Alt-X. Alright, and we're going to talk about how to make multiple Booleans. The first thing I need to do is optimize this mesh because it's got way too many segments. Those segments are going to cause me trouble. So I can scale it down a little bit. I want to make this piece different. So I'm going to change my box to an editable poly, select these vertices here, and scale them out because I want my Boolean to have a little bit of a beveled piece to it. And I'm going to, here, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's move that down to there. Alt-X, make sure that's what I want. Yeah. Now see, I've got those model pieces below the surface. That's what I'm after here. And we'll go back to Alt-X. And I'm going to Boolean this piece into my mesh. Scoot my mesh over just a little bit so those segments are nice and even. And I'm going to scoot this over a little bit just so I've got some more room. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to Boolean this in, but I want 3 of these pieces. This is common on the tank with Booleans, as we get a lot of repeating objects. So I'm going to hold Shift down and left click and drag, and I'm going to make another one. Then I'm going to make this 2, copy, so that I have 3 across. Okay? Now, I can't just select all 3 of these and say Boolean. It's not going to let me do that. What I have to do is select one and attach the rest. Under Edit Poly, Attach. Now they're all one object, even though it looks like 3. They're all one object. See the brackets around them. And now I can Boolean this. I'm going to select the box. I'm going to go over here again to Create Geometry Compound Objects, Boolean, pick operand B, boom, and we've got our little pieces cut out, nice and even. We've got a lot of errors in there though that have to be fixed. In this case, the easiest way to fix the errors is to, again, right click on the boxes now, Boolean, go back down to Edit Poly, go to Polygon. I'm going to get rid of all of these because I don't need them. Hit Delete. And then I'm going to go to Create. I'm going to zoom in here too so I can see what I'm doing. Create. And we're going to seam all of this in. So here, 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 here. Got to make sure I'm using the right guy can go here. Actually, see, we've got some vertices here that need to be welded. So I'm going to target weld these vertices. Just clean them up. These are left from that interior segment from the original box. So I'm just target welding these. There we go. Always spin this around, make sure everything looks whole still, see if there's any weirdness going on. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to Polygon, go to Create. There we go. Okay, these guys here can stay. The ones on the edges, these are fine, at least for now, because they're part of the structure of the box. And if you get a little confused as to what you're looking at, just spin the box around a little bit, because sometimes it can be hard to tell what you're looking at. Now, we've got one more vertice here. Found a vertice I missed. Target weld these little guys here have to get cleaned up. Okay. There we go. This one can go over here, I guess. This guy goes here. This guy goes across to here. This one goes over here. And if you can't figure out where the pieces go, you want it to be a nice even triangle or square when possible. It's not always possible. But when possible, try to make it a nice even-sided one, and keep spinning it. See how I can see everything's nice and flat there? That's what we want. Create. And you're not always going to have a choice of making everything nice and even, but where you can, see, like this is a great big long triangle. In fact, it doesn't even need to be a triangle. It can be a square. We want to avoid long, skinny triangles or four-sided polygons. So now that's all seamed up. And that is a nice even mesh. These are four-sided down below, so I don't have to do anything. And now we've made a nice error-free mesh. Even though it may not look neat, that's a pretty optimized mesh for our Booleans. Okay? Now, let's talk about Booleans when we're dealing with the tank object itself. I'm going to zoom out here and unhide all. I'm going to hop over to this guy, hide this one. Okay, and let's talk about the favorite one to Boolean, and that is a sphere. The dreaded sphere. Spheres can be tricky. The first thing we need to do with this sphere, if we want to get it into a game, I'm going to position this here, right over the front of my trunk on my tank, is we need to optimize it. And we can't have this many segments if we want it to go into a game. So we're going to lower it a little bit. We can have some segments, we just can't have a ton. I'm going to make the radius a little bit bigger. Make sure it's not intersecting anything back here in the back. Make sure it's nice and centered. There we go. Oops, didn't want to do that. There we are. Okay. And now we've got this guy nice and centered. I'm going to select the tank itself. Now we got a couple things going on. We have a bent surface on the purple tank body, and we've got a really bent or organic shape here in the sphere. And this is where it can get tricky, so keep your fingers crossed that this doesn't crash. You would want to save at this point here. I'll be a good role model, and I will save. Be a real good role model. And now we're going to Boolean this guy. So same spot we were before. Boolean, pick operand B, keep your fingers crossed, and we've got a Boolean. Okay. But we've got a lot of polygons there that have to be cleaned up, right? You can kind of see some of the cleanup we're going to have to do here. So let's go clean it up. Right click, we'll force that guy back down to editable poly. The first thing I'm going to do is do some target welds. And we've got a few pieces here. That's going to have to go there, that's going to go there. This guy's going to go up there. I'm just going to weld this top row all the way around because we don't need that little pile of polygons there. See all these little errors in here that have got to be cleaned up. In fact, there's even errors in here we can't see. I'll show you what Boolean does. There's a good example right here. See that whole mess right there? That's all got to be cleaned up. And we can target weld them all together because we don't need them all. So that's much cleaner, I believe. Yep, that's much cleaner. Zoom out so you can get an idea of where I'm at here. Target weld these guys together. And a few more. There we are. Now that's not a bad Boolean. It's pretty optimized, and probably about as optimized as we're going to get. We could delete these bottom polygons and seam them up using four-sided polygons, which would actually save us some polygons, but for now I'm just going to leave it. There's one other thing we want to do, and that is we want to select all the polygons in this little ring, or not polygons, I'm sorry, vertices. You can see they're all red now. And we want to do a weld on it. And the way we do that, we're doing that because we may have double vertices here that we don't even know about left over from the Boolean. So I'm going to click Settings. The weld threshold is how near, I guess how far apart, the vertices are before they're welded. A point 1 rarely does what we need it to. So what I'm going to do is weld this up a little bit, up to about let's go up to a little bit farther, right up in there. And if we don't see any huge changes, we can assume that everything's okay. And you can see before there was 232 vertices. Afterwards, there was only 225. So some of these vertices in here were double vertices, and we just welded them together. And that's how you can tell. See, I can go down. If I go down too far, it's going to... See, if I go down to 0, it's 232. And now I can go right up to about 158, and it's going to be 225. I'll hit apply. And OK. You could just hit OK. Wanted to see if there was any other change. Alright, and you know the last thing we've got to do is we've got to go to these polygons here. We're going to have to give them up and delete them. And we're going to create our new polygons there at the top. Zoom in here again. There we go. Get a decent angle here to work with. Then we'll go to create. And we will seam these guys in. You could do one side and apply symmetry to this too if you wanted to, now that you know how to do that. It's not a bad idea. Getting lost on what I'm looking at here. There we go. I'm just left clicking on each vertice that I want to connect. Remember, 3-sided polygons are fine. Okay, I'm going to try and make the same design here on the other side just to keep things neat. Try to be a good role model for you. So a lot of folks in the game industry really don't like Booleans. And you'll hear a lot of times, don't use Booleans in anything that's going to a game. The Boolean itself isn't a bad thing, it's just a tool. But it's the errors that the Boolean leaves behind that are the problem. If you clean up the errors and you get used to what Booleans cause in a mesh, there's no problem using them. Booleans aren't bad, it's the people who make the Booleans that are bad. So, there we go. This guy is going to go here, here, oops, here, 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 and here. There we go. And we are all seamed up. So, that'll work pretty well. That is how you would make a Boolean in a game mesh. So you're going to have to do some cleanup if you want to use Booleans. But trying to get a shape like this any other way is going to be pretty difficult. Okay, so that's Booleans. Play with them. Try to clean up the errors. It's not going to be so important in this first project, but try to clean up your errors to get in the habit of doing so. And we will talk about other ways of finding those errors later on down the road. But for now, you kind of know what to look for.